Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Marcus back at it again. Finally, after so long of not making any content, back at it with a video today, talking about decks in the meta. I've heard a lot of griping and grumbling in the community. And so, with my return after being gone for like 2 months, I think it's time that we kind of like address the quote unquote elephants of the room in order to kind of just have this discussion and really kind of put into perspective just like my opinion on the meta and where it's going to go and where it needs to go. So I want to start off by defending red for a second before we like get into just really axing it out of the meta, which I don't know what's going to happen to red. Basically because the community seems to have a very strong pull and idea that so long as Gogeta and Sin exist, there will never be another good red deck. Personally, I don't agree with that statement, and I don't agree with taking them away from the format. And I'll kind of like explain like the first one, and then I'll get into the second part. But like the first part is that I don't think that they're. I guess I'll just make this the first part. The first part is bottom line is those decks have problematic cards in them. They are not problems in and of themselves. So a lot of people point to like the Z energy problem, right? Like they generate too much Z energy. Well, that's not a problem, right? Like that just means it does this mechanic well. The question is what's the play out of the Z deck that's powerful? So, black could generate all the Z energy at once, and it has only Boo, right? So, like, really, has a generic Z card. Same thing with, Supreme Kai, right? Trunks generates 2 Z energy by itself outside of, right, anything you're comboing from your hand, and it's not a problem because there's nothing super powerful to play out of it. And if black had something like Rush Attack Vegeta, well, then maybe like it would be a little bit different, like a Vegeta that kind of like was like, crit. I think that'd be kind of cool. But maybe that'd be too powerful. I don't know. But here's the thing. Okay, like if you killed Sin and Gogeta, you just make U7 Goku the best red deck in the game. Okay, like that's exactly what would happen. Okay, and everyone's like, well, that might be more fair because like it generates like Z energy like everyone else, like in the combo phase and all this other crap. Well, then it's just going to come down to whichever deck can just draw the most cards in the game. So then you have to axe like Trunks Vegeta, you have to axe Golden Frieza, you'd have to axe like all these things. And the thing is that like they're not problematic because they generate Z energy. Like that's not a thing. Like everyone wants to complain about it, but it's not a big deal. Like the amount of Z energy sitting in my opponent's Z energy, enabling like in Sin, enabling Dread Destroy or something, nobody cares, right? Like the deck is still beatable, like with that. But that is that statement, the deck is beatable, is primarily the problem. So like if you're playing red and you play against, say you play Gogeta, right? And you play against red, green, or black, you basically don't draw. You basically have like a toss-up on what's going to happen to you when the 8 drop comes down. But if you're playing against yellow or blue, like, you just don't die, right? And this isn't including all the other generic cards in the game. Like we have Mecha Gabora, we got, Shin Noble Supremacy. We've got black has the Bardock card that can like overwhelm for a black, right? And basically limit that card and what it's going to do when they attempt to play it. And it still doesn't change that like there is a lot of problematic aspects to what that card does, especially with everybody's like concept that you're going to be able to now generically splash Triumphant Together because of the new SCR. It's like you really realize that in order for that card to ever be relevant, you'd have to see your SCR. You have to see your SCR in order to do anything, right? Like, people just don't understand how luck-sacky that would be. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a strong play. It just means that, like, it's luck-sacky, right? But what we need to consider is that yellow and blue have cards that are good against that 8-drop. And ergo, that is what we need to be addressing, right? How can we give these other colors cards to phase and flood against a big card like Gogeta? And I think that is the simplest solution possible, because banning these decks, both Sin and Gogeta, is just like saying, look, if you're good at doing what the game wants you to do, then we're just going to ban you because we're too much of a baby to figure it out. And the other aspect of this is that they are not winning events left and right. The majority of the events that have been won are either by yellow, predominantly, with red sprinkled in there, or blue. And this idea that these two decks are just triumphantly rampaging and stomping out every single tournament is not a thing, right? I think Gogeta's won twice. I've seen Sin win twice. I've seen Golden Frieza, Trunks Vegeta, and Majin Vegeta win multiple tournaments, okay? So let's just stop acting like a set 1 deck winning in set 20 is somehow something that we need to be addressing, right? Or not addressing, but we need to address the decks that are 2 sets old, like 3 sets old. So it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, we're talking different languages. People say these 2 decks have been around for too long. I think Trunks Vegeta winning Worlds and being, like, around for 2 sets longer definitely merits, like, a closer look. I mean, you want to talk about, like, another thing that people are going to point to is, like, Gogeta's card draw. Okay, well, Trunks Vegeta essentially is a draw 3 every turn, or draw 2, play 2 cards. And then for like 1 energy, you're going to draw 2 more cards. The deck draws an absurd amount of cards, while having access to 2 of the best floodgates in the game, being Robotic Riposte and the new Vegito card. And everybody wants to act like Red, which doesn't have very many good floodgates outside of Topo, which if you tap 2 energy for Topo, you've done a number of things. 1, you've probably played less aggressively than you probably should, considering you're playing a red deck. And 2, if that card gets countered for 2 energy, it's very pricey. It's not like blue, right, where like Gamma, you could tap 2 for the horror card, and then like they counter that, and then you have a 17 to follow it up with, and then they're flooded, right? That 2 energy is probably like reserved back for the defense, and now you're just tapped, which means you could die. So I just don't get, right? If it's about card draw, right, Golden Frieza draws a lot of cards, right? If it's about card draw, Trunks Vegeta draws a lot of cards. Heck, even the Green Gogeta deck that just topped recently shows it can draw a lot of cards. So, yes, I'm going to not be incredibly biased here and say that Gogeta does draw too many cards. It does. It can still draw 5. It's insane. It can basically draw 5 cards between the Unison and the leader without ever spending an energy to do any of it. I'm not going to act like, and while generating 2 Z energy, I'm not going to act like that is not really strong. But it doesn't mean that the deck isn't beatable. It doesn't mean that there aren't answers to like, if you took the 8-drop out of the deck, it would be a completely different deck, number 1. But number 2, you're not running into this issue where you feel like the deck's overly oppressive. The other problem is that if it didn't have a Z Awaken, like the 100k Z Awaken, it definitely wouldn't feel as bad, right? You'd be playing a much different game. Decks would be able to pressure a lot more. And don't even get me started about Majin Vegeta. Majin Vegeta is a ridiculous deck. Okay, like everybody like out here acting, oh no, it's like, you know, like it's a ridiculous deck. It draws a fair amount of cards while putting on a wide board at an extremely cheap range, and all of them are like 19k, 25, 20, 25k beat sticks that just get to restand and do this crap all over again. Like, it's really dumb. And again, like, we have this strong deck sitting right here, and we're gonna act like, yeah, these decks gotta go. So like, let's just cut the bull crap for like 5 seconds and not just recreate another red U7 format, right? Because that's all it would be. We like, if red would then just be reduced to playing U7, which is a subpar, sub-ultimate, terrible deck. And this is the last aspect that I'm going to talk about with red. Okay, I'm not like other people. Okay, my opinion about the way decks need to be built is strong. Okay, you don't get brownie points for being a weakly built and are typically synergistic deck, and say that because this deck is weak compared to the other two decks that are in its color pool that are really strong, that means that, you know, we don't want to power creep or build a deck up to that level, so we're not going to, I mean, no, right? Like, that's not a reason to hit those two decks, in my opinion, right? Because what you're saying, again, is that, like, because Pilaf isn't cutting it, or Bulma isn't cutting it because the A-Draw just blows up all of its cards, right? That means that this deck needs to go. Stupid. Yeah, that's, like, stupid. I don't mean to trash your opinion if that's what it is, but, like, I find it stupid because primarily, like, your concern isn't about why this deck has inefficiencies compared to what makes a good deck in this format a good deck. Your concern is to stomp your feet and get it banned because it's not fair, right? Well, LeBron James, his body is not fair, but you can't control that, right? So when and that's what Gogeta and Sin are, right? Like, they're the LeBron James and the Michael Jordan of Dragon Ball. And what you need to do is find a Steph Curry, find a Kobe, right? Find a Tim Duncan, a Shaquille O'Neal, and bring them to the party instead of just crapping on saying, yeah, they're not allowed to play because they're too good. Like, it's really dumb to me. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like Gamma, for example, right? That Unison is one of the best Z generators ever. Like, the Unison alone is an insane card when it comes to generating card advantage. And we're not entirely, like, fair when it comes to, assessing that aspect of it. But maybe they are, because there's people who think that Gamma deserves to be banned. I'm going to move on to the next segment, and it's about Yellow. I have no idea what Bandai or anybody on the creative team was thinking when they made that Sin Shenron. So, yeah, I have no answer for you. That card's dumb. And, yeah. Yellow's dumb. Okay? This is going to be my very biggest concern. Okay, let's say that we hit Gogeta and Sin. We just literally hand the keys to Yellow unless we banned 3 leaders right off the bat. If you don't ban Golden Frieza, Majin Vegeta, and Trunks Cheetah right next to those 2 red decks, you just might as well hand it to any one of those 3. Now, Majin Vegeta is excusable because it's been around, like, the most recent, right? Like, it's not been here that long. But the other 2 are career criminals, Golden Frieza especially, that needs to go. Okay? Golden Frieza is a ridiculously strong deck. It does have its weaknesses and pitfalls, But let's be real. Philip Tarpini won Worlds with Trunks Vegeta. He then won his first regional after Worlds with Golden Frieza. Golden Frieza then got a second place, another first place. Trunks Vegeta got a first place, and then I think Majin Vegeta has 2 first places in various tournaments around the world. So let's stop acting like One Red is just this giant boogeyman that dominates and terrorizes everyone in the format, and stop acting like Yellow doesn't deserve and is just as guilty, if not more guilty. You have 2 decks that are older than both of the red decks that everybody wants banned, but for some reason, because it's Golden Frieza and Trunks Vegeta drawing 2 or 3 cards a turn, same dang thing, right? You have your draw, your EX Evolve draw, and that, and like, let's be real here, okay? Everyone wants to sit there and talk about cards that like warp the format in a bad way. The Trunks blocker is one of the most format warping cards in the game. I'm tired of people acting like this card is not a big deal. I just watched a video where Crossworld's talking about how, and I'm not trying to call him out or anything, but he's talking about how, like, yeah, we have free play now. We're going to play a card that, like, we're going to, you know, we don't really mind resting, right? But you still spent energy and invested a resource into a card that is rest. And there are certain strategies that cannot do that, right? And it just, like, there are rogue strategies that literally Trunks Vegeta raffle stomps simply on the back of the fact that that card exists. The same thing applies, right, to the Vegeta. People don't get it. Vegeta can be more than just that. So if the card you played that gets rested is weak, and the card that you actually played is a card that, like, you'd want to keep on the board, it doesn't even matter if it has barrier, because Vegeta swings at the weak card and pops the other card, and for 1 energy, they drew 2, and they had their swing, and they did this, and now they have 1 or 2 energy open for a Robotic Riposte and their stinking Vegito guy, and it feels bad. And we talk about how, like, that now, like, you know, their Z-Litter's not even really played. It's not even really used. But let's, you know, talk about how that, like, with a right amount of energy, you can be looking at, like, so many crit strikes in a turn. It's ridiculous. And then we're gonna take this a step further, right? Like, this is where, you know, people, like, really just don't understand. Like, Golden Frieza, right? Golden Frieza's only weakness is combo power. But it has no amount of weaknesses when it comes to its win condition. Its win condition is the best in the game. Number 1, unisons. There's very rarely any extra card negates that affect unisons. Let's just get this out of the way. Unless you're playing green, okay? Or, like, any of those hyper flood like effects, like the Janemba absorption card for Finn, or the more recent ones that just came out for, like, extra card Brawly or something like that. You're really not going to be able to handle a unison turn like that, right? That they're going to have. Secondly, it's got its SCR, it's got Cold Bloodlust, like, still, like, arguably one of the strongest counter plays in the game. And it's got a win condition that is absolutely absurd. For 3 energy, it'll play the Golden Cooler SCR and completely obliterate your face. And that 3 energy, because it's going to get 2 back, right? On its next turn, it's going to have 2 energy to defend itself in a blocker while reducing your hand size down to 5. So, yeah. I just don't know what we're complaining about when we talk about, like, all these things, like, being so problematic. I mean, Golden Frieza is drawing 2 cards a turn while playing with 2 more extra energy than every other deck. Not including all the other cards that generated cards and effects, and its awaken turn, if it awakens on its turn, is ridiculous. Like, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 5 card draw, not including whatever else you're drawing off of your other effects. So it's just stupid. Right? Like I mean, it's honestly just like stupid. And then Majin Vegeta is ridiculous, man. Like that deck is just literally full of value left and right, coupled with a lot of power for the value that you get, and good ways to generate draws for literally nothing. And it's got a self-bean effect. It's got an amazing Z-Leader because it has a Z-Leader that it can play. It has access to free negates. I mean, there's no underselling how good of a deck that deck is. And yet, we talk about the problem of Sin and Gogeta. Like, let me tell you something. The difference in aggression between how Majin Vegeta plays and how Sin Shenron play are completely identical. They're literally right there. There's just no, I mean, it's A or B, okay? And consistency-wise, you could even argue that Majin Vegeta is going to be better. Okay, the game plan against Majin Vegeta is a lot harder to prepare for, especially if you're a battle card signature deck, much like Sin is. So this idea and concept that like we got to get rid of the boogeyman in the format, that's red, right? You know, and all these other things, it's just stupid, man. Like we got to stop being dumb with our ignorance about like what makes a deck good in this game. And I'm going to argue, right, yellow is more problematic in this format right now than red is. There's just no other way to really see it. I just don't understand what you're talking about if you say that it's not. Okay? Like, literally, the leaders probably argue the Z leader for Sin, but not really. I mean, the Z leader for Sin isn't nearly doing the same thing that Majin Vegeta's Z leader is, right? And the Z leader for the Goku Vegeta deck is it's pretty good, but like Goku Vegeta just draws a lot of cards, okay? And that's fine. That's fine. It's totally fair to critique. But let's talk for a second about like Yellow's promo card, like that allows you to have like Sin. I mentioned earlier, but like a Walking Cold Bloodlust on top of everything else that it already has is a little too oppressive. And I just don't understand why they would ever give Yellow a card like that. But they did. And then furthermore, you know, this idea that like red is the color of aggression is just not right. Like it's just honestly not right. Because yellow does it very well. Trunks Vegeta can do it very well. The fact that their leader can become a 25k double strike basically at any point in the game is exactly the kind of problem I'm talking about. Golden Frieza can pop off like that. Okay, I'm not trolling you. It can pop off like that. If you see 2 or 3, sometimes like 3 is the most I've ever seen. 3 Gohan unisons come down in a turn where it can activate its minus ability. Like, bro, you've lost. Nobody can take, okay, what is it? A Ninagon like 9-agon attack, okay, which is like 9. You're not going to take 9 25Ks to the face, now a 30K leader, and all this other stuff, right? You're just not going to take that. You're done. 9 card swinging for 25K is either expending your whole hand, your strategy, and the game, or the game. Like it's just not going to happen. Even 2, right? 6 25K attacks is ridiculous. It is. There's no other way to say it, man. And the fact of the matter is that they play a unison and it lives 1 turn and they have another one in their hand, they're guaranteed to do that same play I'm talking about for 1 energy because they're going to get 2 of it back. So we can just walk down that road no matter what you want to say. And then now I'm going to talk about blue. I am glad that they axed Crimson Coup, because I'm going to be honest, I think that blue right now is stupid. Okay, I just think that blue is in a very toxic place. Number one, UI Kamehameha probably needs to be banned. I'm just going to be like 1,000% with you about this. As long as UI Kamehameha, Beerus destroys, the draw Goku, like whatever, that they can splash in, as long as it has, well, I'll just say this. As long as it has UI Kamehameha and Beerus destroys, blue will continuously be one of the best colors ever. It just matters what leader you find and what strategy you have to break it. And here's why, right? Beerus destroys basically effectively removes rush weenie cards out of the game. Let's say a barrier, while drawing a card to do so. Blue still has access to Senzu Bean, so defensively these cards just get more insane. So if you're swinging at a 15k leader, you beam, play Bear destroys. That card, even if it's swinging for 25k, now needs to be a 30 to deal damage, and they'll easily get to 30 while bottom decking a weenie card, right? Furthermore, UI Kamehameha is a worse offender, because if you had 4 copies of it and 1 energy in hand, it is a 1-for-1 trade at 25k. Meaning that you can simply withstand it for the cards that you have in your hand. And offensively, if you could use it to put pressure, you will draw for it. So, again, I think UI Kamehameha is primarily the problem, but I think it needs to go. I think it needs to be banned. And here's the thing. Blue has always been about mana manipulation. And whether or not you can do that in an effective or a good way, or a way that's like helpful. And I totally understand and see that, right? Like, I'm not going to like act like that's not what it does. But the thing is that like when Gamma picks up 3 cards and puts them down, or, you know, Android 21 untaps 5, or this or that or that, everybody wants to come to the table and act like blue is in a rough spot after just coming out of it's one of the most dominant positions in a nationals series of national events up into worlds. And we are going to act like we want this color to be relevant again, while it has all these incredibly oppressive defensive tools and energy manipulations. Like, stop. And furthermore, people want to act like Gamma is a problem, and I agree that Gamma is really strong, but again, how many events does it take? And the answer to that is little to none. And it's the same thing with the 21 problem, right? Everyone wants to talk about 21 this, 21 that. Like, it's either good or it's bad or something, you know, it's whatever. But, like, the thing is the reason why blue also isn't as strong is because as long as 21 exists, it will be able to abuse that color. And that has been kind of blue's downfall and check to itself, because it's going to, you know, open up the doors to what you have here versus what they have over there, and what you can do with it, and all these other things. They're even making a green leader basically blue in the new Android 16. But moving on, you're going to go to green. Green keeps seeping through the cracks with multiple decks. Like, we had a Gogeta deck top. Now we have some freaking extra card Brawly deck topping. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Green's either terrible or it's viable, and I can't figure out which one it is. We had Go Tanks win the first event. So yeah. Personally, at a loss for figuring out where green is. But what I can comfortably say, without a shadow of a doubt, is that green is one good deck leader away from figuring it out. And I still don't understand why Cell isn't played as much. Maybe it just dies too much to red, and that's why people don't want to play it. But I don't know, man. It just seems like a really, really strong deck to me, but I could be slacking in that department. But all this to say is that green, people also don't really realize that if green is really good, it will be very toxic. And I think that's also why Bandai hasn't really made green great. Um, because, like, at the end of the day, it has Rebrand, it has Rosie, it has Cells Earth Destroying, which is going to be played for free now off an Activate Battle, so that's cool. It has the Cell, right? The whole Cell deck, the whole Cell chain, Cell Xeno. The Vegito card, the new Cooler promo, Zamasu. The list keeps going. You have a lot of cards that just pitch cards from your opponent's hand. So if you could do that in an effective manner, it's gonna be a problem. And I think that, like, even with every one time, oh, we'll just start siding Dabura. Well, first off, Dabura is not a very good solution because you're gonna have to tap for the card. But secondly, yellow is just going to dominate again because anytime hand destruction is good, yellow has that free Gohan that's a 1-for-1 trade off of it getting pitched off of an effect. So, yeah, it's just, I mean, that's free 4 cards that they're going to just be like, you played a card, you spent energy, and I didn't lose really much of anything. And furthermore, like, because of that, anything else on top of that is just going to be extra gravy. Like if you had like a Dabura and that, right, you just never lose hand destruction. You just, move on with your long leg and merry life. So, yeah, I just think that, like, when it comes to the tools that we need to sit down, analyze, think about, and talk about in this game, as to what needs to go and what needs to not go, I think we need to stop looking at like decks as the problem, right? Start looking at cards. Which brings me to black. Okay, so black is also like right there. I think that Cumber is really strong. I think Supreme Kai is really good, but it's got its consistency issues, and it struggles against yellow. Like, just straight up, yellow murders Kai. One, it has better floods, because resting your cards is annoying, although you will have a lot of cards to rest. Robotic Riposte is annoying. The Vegito is annoying. And the counter for Kai, why they ever thought making a counter for 3 being a fair thing in a black deck is stupid. Maybe because they assume that black's the more aggressive color, like, so naturally, like, they should, but, like, they messed up with that because, like, that counter should have been a 2 energy counter. So you have other plays to do. Like, black doesn't get its energy back ever, right? Like, unless you're the Mirror Assault from the Skies, there's no real way to untap energy in black. And so I just don't really understand how, like, they're supposed to effectively play that card when you literally have the antithesis of it right there. Like it's just right there. It's just the antithesis of untap is, of energy manipulation or energy resource management, I should say, is right there. It's black. Like, it's the hardest deck to struggle with it in the game because it doesn't have any really good cards. I've been saying I'm defensive cards. It has no good floodgates that are battle cards, period. The best floodgates it does have, everybody gets to use, so it has nothing exclusive. It doesn't have very good unisons. It definitely doesn't have any good counter plays at all. All of them are literally trash, and if any of them are good, you can play them in any other deck. And furthermore, it has no identity at all. Black does not have an identity. You can't tell if it's aggro. You can't tell if it's warping cards. You can't tell if it's mid range, right? You can't tell if it's removal, right? Like, maybe that's what it is, a little bit of removal, critical, all these other things. But, like, again, it can't be all these things at the same time because it's not, right? There's, like, Hatch is not critical. It's not, right? But it's a black deck. Like, and again, there's no synonymous identity to black. There isn't. I mean, warp would be the only thing that I'd say that it does, but even then, no. Like, Cumber's about bottom decking the cards, not really warping them. Maybe the evil, like the SCR, the Cumber SCR, possibly. Other than that, no. Don't know what you're talking about. Like Supreme Kai of Time, maybe. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a color that's rather identityless. And personally, these are the things that I think should come to mind and what they should build their next deck, good black deck around. I think that they were starting in the right direction with Cumber. It needs to be a black Saiyan. It needs to have a Saiyan only, by the way. Right? I can't tell you how screwed certain black decks are because Saiyan only is not printed on the card. It needs to be aggressive. And it needs a floodgate. And it needs it just needs to be like very, 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 very little to free. I mean, that's what black was. Black for the longest was free play, but we're just it's not good. None of those decks are good. Like Jack's not good. Maybe, but I don't know. I don't really think it's good. I don't think Black Mass Saiyan is good. So, yep, just something to think about. Like things we got to do. Got to be better. Like about our opinions, and I think this is not going to be a very well received video because I know a lot of people are going to be like, you don't know what you're talking about, like red this, red that. Well, I mean, I've watched literally like red not dominate the format the way that you make it sound like it does. And a lot of people triumph together like that. It used to be banned, like it's so broken and oppressive. And yet if you play against yellow or blue, like you auto lose for even attempting to play the card. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, so I triumph together. What are you going to do? Just 3 super combos? No, they just play Gohan, Piccolo, SCR, and then instantly kill you on the next turn because, like, you swung at their leader. So they don't have to rest everything. I don't know what you're talking about, guy. So, it's so dumb, man. Like, and then, everyone like saying, like, that's super aggressive. Mama Vegeta plays like that, SCR, that Vegito, and everything. So, again, I don't know what you're talking about, guy. Doesn't make any sense. It really just doesn't make any sense. And we just live in a world where, like, people, and, like, again, like, it'll also have Swift Retaliation Cooler. There's a card that I completely forgot to talk about. Like, it has Swift Retaliation Cooler. Right? Like, the Goku and Kai does warp itself to, like, draw 2, warp 1, I think. But, like, let's be real for a second, man. That is not the same conversation. Black does not have a free 30k SCR that comes down afterwards and just gets to rest something. Like, if there was a black Gohan Piccolo SCR that did the same thing, that said, for if your opponent has 5 cards in their warp, then you can reduce the card of this card's energy cost in your hand for every card in your opponent's warp. And it had 30k combo power, and it came in, drew a card, and warped a card, and then when it swung, it warped a card, ignoring barrier, or warped a card. I would agree with you, but the reality is that doesn't exist, and we need to, like, probably, might be something to look at. I don't know. But what I do know is that we constantly want to be red. We want to be raid good decks that are good because they are good. Like, I can't express this enough. There are answers. If you hate playing against red or you play against it a lot, play blue. If you hate playing, or yellow. If you hate playing against yellow, play the decks that counter those, right? Or learn your matchups. I can't express this enough. Like, blue trashes red, period. Every time. You don't want to lose to red? Play blue. Find a good blue deck. But we need to stop just complaining all the time. So that's my 40-minute sermon on the state of the format. I think that, honestly, the format's really healthy. You look at all the decks that top in a top 16, and you're like, that's pretty healthy. So, I don't know. That's it for me. I'll see you guys next time. It's Marcus from TCG Discussions, signing off. Laters.